Good morning, everyone. So we're discussing stuff near and dear to my heart today. So as I said yesterday in the business meeting, I want to make sure that you all know if you have an idea or something that you've decided that you can't live without in your business, please interrupt so we can talk about it, because as much as I would like to own every technology toy and test drive it personally, I do not. So we've got several things to discuss, including items that I do own, as well as some new items coming out that make sense as technology investments that actually enhance productivity. I guess before we start getting into the tech stuff, as much as I like gadgets, it does bear mentioning that from a business standpoint, of course, this stuff only makes sense if it actually has a legitimate return on investment by increasing your productivity or streamlining efficiency or both. And so as we go through this, I really will be trying to keep focused on which of these things will have a meaningful, positive impact on your ability to crank out your work and do so more efficiently. So we're discussing current items that you may want to consider as end-of-year purchases, so you're able to deduct them before the end of this calendar year. The general topics I'm prepared to discuss, along with anything else you want to, are tablet, ultrabook, convertible ultrabooks. That's kind of in the category of ultra-portable devices that are, approximately this size. We'll discuss best apps, and that's where I'm eager for any of you who are using tablets or iPads to share as well. And then we'll also discuss accessories that are so important that once you add them into your life, you're going to wonder how it is that you survived feeling a sense of completeness without them. And then we'll talk cameras briefly. So, ultra-portable device options. I got my iPad in May of this year, and I'm a technophile, and I personally had no desire to go buy an iPad. And the reason I didn't is I didn't need another device with a virtual keyboard. I already disliked using my fingers on the screen of my phone enough. I really didn't want another device that I'd be smudging up with fingerprints. That wasn't going to, and we don't, as business users, number one, you're not likely to type at your maximum speed on a virtual keyboard, and number two, you're likely to make errors, and in many cases, embarrassing errors. And I don't know if any of you are familiar with the spectacular website damnyouautocorrect.com. If you are not, bookmark it and visit it regularly, because it is filled with screenshots of spectacularly funny and often unintentionally dirty text message exchanges thanks to autocorrect. So anyway, and as an example, Jeffrey and I were corresponding while I was on vacation a few weeks ago about a transaction that we were getting the finishing details on, and I had told him, yeah, as soon as you get that to me, I'll get it circulated via DocuSign to the sellers. And Jeffrey replied a moment later and said, in a Beavis and Butthead sort of a way, "You said DocuSign." So that's what autocorrect changed it to when it sent. Anyway, so that was why I didn't have any desire to have an iPad. That wasn't going to really do me any good. My aha moment in terms of making me more productive was when I realized you can get iPads and get keyboards that go with them. Now, when we talk about keyboards that go with them, these are third-party accessory keyboards that are not physically connected to the iPad. The iPad communicates with the keyboard with Bluetooth. So once you pair at one time, you turn both devices on, and the iPad behaves as though it's got a keyboard connected, even though it's not a physical connection. Once I realized that devices like this were available, then I'm thinking, okay, now I've got something, because there's a few advantages as a business user. Number one, the virtual keyboard's not eating up my screen space. Number two, I can use a real keyboard with real keys, so I get the speed and the accuracy advantage of having real keys. And it also does provide, in the case of this model, which is made by Zagg, Z-A-G-G, this one does actually protect the case. This has been dropped on the street a couple of times with no damage to the keyboard or the iPad. The keyboard, because it is wireless, it's not getting a power supply from the iPad. Because it is wireless, it does have its own battery, it does need to be charged. I have used this for probably 2 months straight without needing to charge it, and that's kind of what the reviews indicated before I bought it, is that it will go for weeks at a time without needing charge. So you charge it overnight once every couple of months, and you're good to go. So the big advantage of a device like this would be, I already live off of a large notebook computer, and so this beast is not the sort of thing that I can just pop out when I'm sitting in a conference session for a bunch of reasons. It's heavy, it runs hot, it sounds like a hairdryer because it's got a quad-core processor. When the fans fire up, it has bad battery life, and it doesn't have built-in internet connectivity to a cellular network. By contrast, this is very small. This takes literally a second to go from off to working and connected. If you buy an iPad or another tablet model that has onboard cellular connectivity, then you don't have to worry about whether you're in a Wi-Fi hotspot. As long as you have a cellular signal, you're good to go. So that issue no longer is something you have to hunt for or waste time getting connected to. And you're able to do a lot of the most important things that we need to do on the go, which would be pop open a browser window, get into Anovia to look something up, respond to emails, and run apps sometimes. So those are the upsides. So those are all kind of the things that influence my buying decisions. So I want to stress this is a supplement to, not a substitute for, a real computer. So I've got quick advantages, most of these I mentioned. So extremely portable, battery life is fantastic. This, an iPad battery with heavy use, with the screen on most of the time, will run for hours and hours and hours. So if you're thinking in terms of traveling, being out on a long day of showings, being at a conference session where you want to be able to watch emails and respond to them or take notes, this will run pretty much all day long, which is phenomenal. I mean, like 10 hours, 12 hours. Gorgeous screen on the third generation models. In Apple parlance, the Retina display models are the ones that have the ultra high resolution screens. None of the Apple displays will look bad, but the Retina models have these ultra high resolution screens. That's only important if you're using it basically to show off pictures. Pictures look just stunning. Text is sharper and clearer. It looks much more like you're reading it off a magazine page because the resolution, the pixels are packed so densely. So that may or may not be a critical item for you. Lots of accessories available. I showed you the keyboard, big array of apps, built-in cellular connectivity. Now the iPad drawbacks, because as I said, it is not a computer substitute. It is really a cell phone operating system connected to a really, really, really nice screen. And so you don't get an awful lot of what we think of as real computer functionality when you're dealing with an iPad. So when I bought this, because I had never owned a device, a tablet device like this, I walked into the Apple store in Georgetown in Washington, D.C., because I was at a conference and had decided that I wanted one that week for being able to keep up with work stuff while I was in conference sessions. I was totally thrown by the fact that there's no USB port. It's not like you can connect an external hard drive and drag and drop stuff. The only way to get stuff on there is to synchronize it via iTunes. Well, this is the only Apple device I've ever owned in my life, so I'm not an iTunes user, so that didn't thrill me. Of course, you've got limitations. If you do want to synchronize movies and audio files, you do have limitations. Those have to be Apple-compatible file types. So you do have a lot of weird considerations that are not intuitive if you're used to using, you know, a Windows-based computer where you plug in your digital camera or you plug in an external hard drive and you're just dragging and dropping. So be aware, it doesn't do all of those things that a fully functional operating system would do on a computer. You're not going to have the ability to compose emails with rich formatting. And by that, what I mean is when I'm emailing clients, it's very common that I will want to compose them in HTML. Now, you may not make that distinction, but what that means is if you're on a real computer, you can make bulleted lists. You can easily drag and drop files and attachments from other applications into your email. You can insert graphics, all of those sorts of things. While an iPad will display richly formatted messages, like if a vendor sends you something that has pictures in it, you know, it will display those properly. It doesn't give you very good options for composing messages with rich formatting. Another example when I'm corresponding with clients would be sending them a hyperlink to here's the most recent new listing that's competing against yours. You can do that on an iPad, but it's very, very clumsy compared to opening up an Anovia window on a Macintosh or on a Windows-based fully functioning computer, copying and pasting the URL into a hyperlink into the email message, and that sort of thing only takes a second. It's very clumsy or impossible to do that sort of thing here. So be aware of that limitation. And I mentioned dragging and dropping. So as I said earlier, the limited functionality really means this will not, and probably for business purposes, should not ever be anything that is a substitute for a real computer, but it can be a phenomenal complement. So the reasons that I said I bought it, it has been perfect for. I can pop it out in a conference, use it all day long, not wait for it to connect. I will point out that if you're using it when you're on the road, like in a hotel convention center, unfortunately, even though the cellular connectivity means that you can connect even if you're not paying to log on to the hotel or convention center's Wi-Fi, a lot of times those are the places where the cellular connectivity is terrible. So there are still every once in a while instances where I find out that I can't connect to the cellular network in the spot that I'd like to, and then you'd have to pay for Wi-Fi. Any questions?
My question is that CCAR app, how do you get that for your iPad?
The Inovia app?
Yeah.
That's a really good question. So remember I said that this is a glorified cell phone with a nice screen on it. When you log on to various websites that are platform sensitive, that is to say websites that are looking to see what kind of device you're accessing it from, so that like the News Gazette will pop up a mobile version versus the full version if it thinks you're looking at it from a cell phone or a tablet. Well, because a large iPad with the high-res display has really got plenty of resolution like you were using a real computer, but you'll get mobile versions that pop up. You can use the full version of Inovia on this pretty well. The Inovia full version was not specifically designed for touchscreen, so it's a little bit clumsy. You may find that you're pinching the screen to enlarge it so that your thumbs are hitting what you intend for them to hit. You'll notice a few little differences, but it is very usable in the full version of Inovia. You can also, because Inovia senses that you're using a portable device, a tablet device, Inovia, when you go to the IlliniHomes.com address, will first thing ask, do you want to go to the mobile version? And all you do is click the link. And I believe the direct URL, I think, is wireless.IlliniHomes.com.
So they've only got one. It's one app. It's not one.
And it's not an app. It's just a custom. It's just a separate version of the Illini Homes website, of the Inovia website.
And I just go there. How do I get that again?
Well, if you have a device like this and you go ahead and just enter IlliniHomes.com, you'll see the Inovia login screen, but you'll also see a pop-up notification that says, hey, there is a separate version just for this type of device. But like I said, when it says this type of device, it's not differentiating between this and a 3-inch cell phone screen. Right. So again, with a real iPad, I tend to use the full version of Inovia. And if you have a good cellular connection, one of the reasons for mobile versions of sites was because they didn't require as much bandwidth. And so if you were on a slow cellular connection, it would dispense with most of those extra graphics that slow things down. If you've got 4G connectivity, it's going to be essentially indistinguishable from the speed you'd get here in the office.
When you say cellular connection, are you saying that you have to have a card for that, or does that go through your regular cell phone?
You don't have a card, and I'll mention that when I differentiate this from some of the ultrabook models. So iPads, the things that make the price points different on iPads are, does it have built-in cellular connectivity on board, and how much memory are you getting? Now remember, from a minute ago I said you don't have a hard drive and you're not going to actually store a lot of files on these things. Really, the only files that in our world you would commonly store on these are going to be your photos, your music library, and any movies that you specifically want on your mobile device. When it comes to our business-related files, and see, that was the mentality I had because I hadn't owned one of these before. I'm thinking, well, I've got X number of gigabytes of current client files that I want to be able to have on hand. And that actually, I'll show you in a minute, I use Dropbox for that. So that actually is not an issue. So yes, it has cellular connectivity. Yes, you have to pay an extra fee for this. I cannot bundle this with my regular cell phone plan, even though it's the same carrier. So you pick out an iPad, and if you want cellular connectivity, you're either committing to buying an AT&T model or a Verizon model. I would strongly urge that you get one with cellular connectivity. If you get one and think, I bet I'm going to be using it in Wi-Fi environments almost all the time, then don't activate the cellular account. You'll just have it in case you decide later on that you find out that you're actually using it on the road and you do need cellular connectivity. But if you make the opposite mistake and you buy one that's Wi-Fi only, there's no going back if you realize, oh, I thought I was always going to be in Wi-Fi environments, but I'm really not. And it's not that you use a lot of bandwidth, but you'd be surprised how often there's just a 2-minute thing that you want to look up while you're out on the road, or speaking for myself, while my spouse has me trapped in the car waiting for her to come out of a store, for example. I mean, stuff like that where you're not in a Wi-Fi environment where having the cellular connectivity is good. One other point, though, is I will mention that some of you may have smartphones that can be turned into a portable Wi-Fi hotspot, or if you're somebody who's already paid to have a dedicated little MiFi hotspot cellular device, you can always keep that around and fire that up, but it's still an extra step and an extra device. It is awfully nice to be able to pull something out that's hardly bigger than a piece of paper and have it connected to the internet in 5 seconds. Pete?
I'm investigating that just right now.
Mm-hmm.
And I learned from my Verizon people that when you have the, in onboard capability, you can use that as a hotspot.
Yes.
And you eliminate the air card.
Yes. Yes, but, so Pete's point is, remember I said you could fire up a MiFi hotspot and then connect this using that Wi-Fi. You can do the opposite. If you get a cellular model of this and you have a cellular data plan, you can turn this into a hotspot, and not only will this connect on its own, but it then can provide the conduit for other devices to connect as well. Just be aware that there is no, you always run metered plans, so you got to commit to a certain number of gigabytes of bandwidth per month. Now I think because this is not something I use for, if I'm downloading a ton of content, or if I'm watching like Netflix, for example, if you're watching a Netflix movie on the road in high definition, that is a lot of data. I mean, like a few gigabytes for a feature-length movie. You don't want to do that on your cellular connection. 4G is fast enough to do it if you have a good signal. You won't want to pay the bill to have the number of gigabytes of bandwidth that you'd need to do that on a regular basis. Max?
You know, I've got that one more step of you know, getting into it. I've just got, my cellular plan offers hotspot included in the pricing, so I've got that, and I just use my phone, so I've never activated my my iPad for Wi-Fi. So it just goes. And
I'm sort of a hybrid. So I have activated, I pay I think $20 a month for a couple of gigabytes of data a month. But for example, if I'm on a road trip and I have my son doing something on the iPad in the backseat of the car, I'll have my phone, which is plugged into the charger, in Wi-Fi hotspot mode. And the device, by the way, as long as you've set it up to recognize that Wi-Fi network, the phone will automatically go to that as a preference. So when I turn on my phone's hotspot, I don't have to do anything to the iPad. As soon as the phone goes into hotspot mode, the iPad recognizes it, connects to it, and uses that instead of the cellular connection that's on board.
Matt, I have Sprint. Okay. Do these devices work with any?
No. Two flavors, AT&T and Verizon. But it doesn't matter because, like I said, I'm a Verizon customer, so and in my experience, Verizon tends to be more reliable in more areas. The coverage seems to be better, and so my decision was based solely on the fact that the primary reason for bothering to have that was when I'm out on the road. But it doesn't matter who your carrier is because you just pick one up for one of those two networks and you're not going to get any discount even if you already were a Sprint customer or a Verizon customer. So it's really just a matter of which of those two networks are you happier with in terms of coverage. But pricing is identical.
So he can still use it from the Wi-Fi.
Oh yeah, but if you have a Sprint device that can be turned into a Wi-Fi hotspot,
I do.
Oh yeah, then you're fine.
Yeah,
then
I got the Evo 4G, is what I have.
I would still encourage you, because you can't go back and change it later, I'd still encourage you to buy a 4G capable model, but you could then opt not to activate that and not to then commit yourself to the $10 or $20 or $30 a month.
These devices will work on any phone?
Right. If they don't care what network your phone is on, as long as your phone can create a Wi-Fi hotspot. That's a good question.
Yeah, I always assume you have to go with that service provider if that's their product.
Nope. Darnell?
Sprint does carry the iPad now, and just recently have launched that, but I don't know that it's on their network. They only offer a 7-inch tablet, Sprint does, on their network, that's on their cellular plan. But it's okay. It's an Android-based phone as opposed to an iPad. But I don't think that the new one coming out from Sprint, they have the iPad Mini now, which is a smaller version of it, of the iPad. But I don't think it's on their network. So yeah, like he said, you'd have to go that other route. I do have the hotspot on my phone, which allows me to use this.
Yeah,
to use this
okay,
wirelessly. But yeah, if you're going with the iPad, then yeah, you're right. Verizon or AT&T, I think, are the only two that have it connectivity through their service. Yeah.
Android tablets. So that's the other main tablet platform. Now there are several others. You can get Kindles, which are their own operating system, and I think Toys R Us has their own private label with its own operating system. But the other mainstream tablet operating platform would be Android. The advantages of Android are they're going to be cheaper. Apple devices are not known for being budget priced. So Android devices for something that's got a comparable screen size and will generally look roughly as pretty and will do all the same sorts of things that you want in terms of email and web browsing and have a decent array of apps. That's all very good, and you're going to be able to get Android devices for a lower price. Now the downside is there's a whole bunch of different equipment makers that are making devices on the Android platform. And so when we're looking at things like these accessory keyboards, obviously this is very, very specifically made for this form factor. And these are specific oftentimes to not only iPad, but a specific generation of iPad. When you're dealing with a more fragmented market, Android devices being made by a whole bunch of different vendors that are a whole bunch of different shapes and sizes, you're not going to have nearly as great a universal supply of accessories to use. But the price point is better and the basic functionality is very similar. Onboard cellular connectivity, all very similar in terms of capabilities to what we described with the iPad. And if you have been using an Android-based smartphone, this is going to feel very familiar. This, as I said, the iPad is the first and only Apple device I've ever owned, and people talk about how user-friendly and intuitive it is, and I wanted to put my head through a wall for a while because I didn't know how to find or access or interact with anything because I was so used to dealing with Android. As I said, fewer accessories just because of the different number of vendors. Same limitations when I say that it's not a real computer with full input-output ports. So all of those same drawbacks. Oh, I will say though that Android-based devices, unlike Apple, where the only way to get stuff between the device and your computer is via iTunes, Android devices can be just plugged in with a USB cord to your computer and turned into the equivalent of an external hard drive. So with Android, there is a little more simplicity. You can plug it into your computer, put it into drive mode, and then you can just drag and drop stuff across. So there is a slight advantage there. So ultrabooks and convertibles. This is a new beast. Ultrabooks have been out for a while, but what had happened up until this year, up until last month, was ultrabooks really were Windows-based machines, or they're Macintosh, like the AirBook, the Apple AirBooks, that are designed to be very, very, very small. But you really had this distinction between it's a tabloid device on a mobile system, on a mobile operating system with a touch screen, or you had what amounted to very small, very light notebook computers not on touch screens that were really still very much computers. Well, ultrabooks really are starting to blur the line. And so Windows 8, which you've probably started to see advertising about because Microsoft's done a great job with their ad campaign. Windows 8, if you use a regular notebook computer or desktop, don't even give it a second thought. But the reason that that's been deployed is to have a new operating system that will run on these tablet hybrid type devices. And so Windows 8 is designed to let you interact with touch screens as well as having a computer with a mouse, that sort of thing. And so the result is you're now seeing this whole new crop of convertible tablet ultrabooks where you have, in this case, this new Dell XPS 12 model. And this is one of several new products that was specifically designed for Windows 8. And so it just launched last month when Windows 8 hit the market. And I'm going to show you a quick video on this, but it is a fully functioning computer. It tries to have most of the virtues of this. It's going to be quite a bit bigger, but still very, very hand-holdable. So I'm guessing maybe 50% bigger or so, 12-inch screen and a little bit thicker. But remember, not much thicker than this with the keyboard on it. That just happens to have the keyboard as part of it. And that you can flip the screen and close the screen face up on the keyboard. So in my world, for real estate, one of the things I'll find myself doing with this is going to a final walkthrough. I use Dropbox. I'll pull up the post-inspection agreement, and I'll hold it like I would a physical notebook, and I'm referring to what items they agreed to fix when we go through and check item by item. Well, with these devices, you can do the same thing. You flip the screen around, close it over the keyboard, and you can hold it in your arm and reference it like you would an iPad sitting by itself. Make sense? That's still only a pound or two. I mean, they're still very lightweight. It will be twice as heavy as an iPad, but an iPad is very, very, very lightweight.
That has a touch screen?
Yes. So how cool is that? Once, you know, if you're not an iPad user and you've never owned a tablet, you're not firsthand familiar with the frustrations of, oh, I love having this portable thing that I can have with me all the time, but boy do I wish I could drag and drop something like I could on my Windows desktop, or boy do I wish I had all the features of Microsoft Outlook, which I don't have if I'm using the Mail app that's built into the iPad. So that lets you do some really, really crazy cool stuff.
Have you seen any reviews or read any reviews about the new Surface, Microsoft's computer?
I have. It's another one of these products that's going to be less expensive than this. So I can figure out how to make this. This is my first foray into embedding YouTube video into a PowerPoint presentation. There we go. So you've got a whole bunch of ultrabooks. So Microsoft is now getting into the business of making hardware itself instead of just making the operating system that other vendors will run on. So Dell is going to use Windows 8 and is making a device in the case of that XPS 12 that you just saw the video for that is very specifically designed to exploit the new operating system. But Microsoft is now making its own hardware devices, and what did you say it was called? I've already forgotten.
Surface.
Right, the Surface is
It's supposed to come out first of the year, a Pro. I mean, it's even better. What I've read, you know, a better.
So the thing that makes that XPS 12 unique is that it's got all the functionality of a computer and actually pretty serious specs in terms of being fast, speedy. You can get it with up to a 256 gigabyte solid state hard drive, whereas iPads max out at 64 gigs. And again, because it's a real computer, you actually can store stuff on your hard drive like you're used to doing with your normal computer. And again, I'm going to talk about Dropbox in a minute, and that's one of those things where when you have those files locally, you don't have to worry if you're in a cellular dead spot and I can't load the file that I had in Dropbox because on an iPad it's not stored on the iPad. You depend on cellular connectivity to download it on demand. So you do have one drawback with that XPS 12, no onboard cellular card. And it doesn't have a bunch of, it has USB ports, but it's not the sort of device where you're going to be able to install a cellular network card later. So when I said that an iPad, if you bought one that's got 4G connectivity and you're paying for the cellular account, you turn it on and in less than 5 seconds you are connected as long as you're somewhere with cellular data coverage. With that, you would have to be in a Wi-Fi hotspot, or you'd have to turn your Wi-Fi hotspot on your phone or on some other device. So that's the big downside right now. Now there are ultrabooks, especially those that your cellular carrier sells, that do have cellular connectivity built in. They're not going to be as robust as that particular model. But as I said, this model, as I have on this screen, this model, the downside is if you get it really tricked out, you're pushing $2,000. But if you're a power user and you really want all the benefits of a real computer and something that's as fast and as potent as what you'd use on a desktop, and you want to be able to take it with you in something that's close to this form factor, that you're paying for that privilege.
What's the size of that 12?
It's a 12-inch screen. I think these are 10-inch screens, so you're looking at a form factor that's going to be just a tiny bit bigger. And then, as I said, thickness is probably going to be very similar to what you see here with this bundled with its keyboard. Battery life, I told you this will run 8-10 hours in a day. Battery life on that is going to be 4 or 5 hours, something like that. So they're designed to be, whereas, you know, this monster with a huge battery is a 2.5-hour battery proposition, just because it's such a power hog. So that's going to be somewhere in the middle. So you are trading off battery life. As I said, cellular connectivity, not all of these convertible ultrabooks have it. And they are bigger, thicker, heavier, but still very portable. Very portable. You know, and this is about 7.5 pounds. You're talking about something that's, you know, 1.5 or something. Any other questions?
So it's more competition for a replacement for the laptop version, right?
Well, yes and no. I mean, as I said, this is a complement, not a replacement for my laptop. And in my
The XPS 12.
Yeah, in my life, if I had that, that would still not replace this. But I'm an unusual, you know, power user. I'm using some really expensive, you know, graphic design and video editing software that really requires a very, very high performance computer. Most of us in our real estate lives could operate off of a Dell XPS 12 and nothing else. And if you needed more storage, like if you started to assemble a long-term document archive and you needed more storage than the onboard 256 gig hard drive, that has USB drives, and so you can just buy for $70 a 500 gigabyte or a 750 gigabyte external hard drive and plug that in when you needed to. And it can run, you know, all of the normal software, full versions of software. And because there are video adapters to connect that XPS 12 to an external monitor, if you are using that as your primary computer when you're in the office, you would have docking options and options for connecting it to like a 24-inch monitor. So that could, I think, feasibly be one's only device and not have you doing what I'm doing with two of them. Best apps for iPad. So iPads are really, I mean, speaking as somebody who's only owned an Apple device for less than a year, when you first turn those things on, I mean, there is this undeniable magical sex appeal about the hardware, the form factor, the way it looks and feels. And they will do a lot of cool stuff right out of the box. Web browsing and the overall look of the screen and photos and movie playback, all that stuff is phenomenal. But remember, iPads were not designed with business users in mind. iPads were designed, the term I've heard somebody use is lifestyle devices. I mean, they were really designed to be something that somebody would lounge around in their house and watch movies with, you know, while they're curled up on the couch, that sort of thing. So business uses have sort of evolved from them because they're very capable, and the form factor, as I've already said, is phenomenal for us to be able to carry around, have in my hand at a final walkthrough, that sort of thing. But for our purposes, an iPad out of the box has some really serious handicaps that the right apps will help you work past. And so we're going to discuss those briefly. PDF Expert is an absolute must-have. And it's a must-have for what we do with it, but it's also something, there's also something important you need to know when you're interacting with your clients. Has anyone else in the room, because it's happened to me several times, has anyone else in the room ever had a client complain that you sent them a set of listing documents that were all blank? No one's had that happen. I've had it happen multiple times. If you send PDF versions of documents that you've filled in as PDF forms, and you go and you type in all the blanks and you save it and you send it to the client, if your client opens it on an iPad and they haven't paid the $5 or $10, whatever it is, for the PDF Expert, iPads will view PDF files on board. I mean, that's standard functionality. What they won't do, because PDF is an Adobe file, Adobe Acrobat is the software that generates PDF files. Well, real PDF files, when you have these third-party viewers, they're not perfect. They won't show and properly display every single feature. And the most common example is the onboard PDF viewer on an iPad will not show the form fields properly filled in. And so more than once, I have filled out every blank, sent a fully populated set of documents to a client, and had the client, number one, assume that I was screwing them over, and then get kind of angry about it and reply with, "Why are you trying to get me to sign blank listing documents? Like, what are you planning to do after the fact?" I'm not sending you blank listing documents. You're not using a device that's got a real Adobe Acrobat viewer on it. And so they then go to open it on their computer. "Oh, sorry, my fault." Again, be aware of that, because at some point it'll happen to you, and you want to give clients a heads up. Hey, if you notice, because most of them don't change their email footer, if you notice they use their iPad, be really sensitive to that. So from our standpoint, those same limitations are important, because if we wanted to fill in listing documents on the iPad, you simply can't if you're using the onboard PDF viewer. If you go to PDF Expert and you get an email, or you open up your listing document package, like we have all of the listing forms with all the blanks just blanked, I can open those on my computer, and normally Tracy's filling those out. But if I'm out in the field and I'm taking property measurements, I'm opening the listing documents form on this in PDF Expert. And I have it with me all the time because I use Dropbox. And so I go into my own forms library, open the standard listing documents file that has the data sheet, the listing agreement, and all the disclosures, and I can then tab through and fill out the blanks in the form as I go. And then right there from the PDF Expert app, there's an option for email this. Now again, no hard drive that you're using on this device, so you can't save it like you would on your computer or do a save as, and then now save this as the client version. Max?
I can save it in iBooks.
In one of the Apple cloud, is it a cloud storage deal, or are you saving it on the device? There are ways to save it on the device.
I think it's on the device, and it's called iBooks.
But what I want to do with it is, once I'm done taking my measurements, I want to pop it open next time at the office, or really in my world, I want to send it to my assistant so that she can then open it up and go looking up all the public record stuff. So again, PDF Expert, you can fill all of that in. You can save a local copy of it. These are also basically crash proof. I mean, those of us who have been using computers a long time have all had experiences where you've gotten a blue screen of death and you lost whatever you were working on most recently. These are virtually crash proof. I've had it hang before and freeze up, but I've never lost anything. So you fill in your listing document, you push the button for email a copy, and you email it to yourself, or you email it to, in my case, your Tracy, and she fills out the rest. So PDF Expert, absolute must-have. And out of all of the PDF applications, and there are many, many of them, that's the one that's best for our purposes because of the ability to interact with form fields. Any other questions? Quick Office is another paid app. It's $10 or $20. This allows you to display and create MS Office documents. Again, Apple on board will let you view many types of Microsoft Office files, but there are lots and lots of limitations. And so if you pay for this app, and I've read the reviews for a whole bunch of different Microsoft Office compatible iPad applications, this is the best one overall in terms of being solidly reviewed by real users that gives you very good ability to interact with Excel files, PowerPoint files, and Microsoft Word files. So it's great. You will still not find, I mean, there's a reason that these apps are $10 or $20 and Microsoft Office Professional is $300. This is still not a substitute for Microsoft Office. I would never want to try to create a presentation as complicated as this one, which is nothing terribly complex, on an iPad. But it's great if you are wanting to be able to pull up, view, and edit Microsoft Office documents.
You have that one?
I do.
Okay.
This is an interesting one. This is called Form Mobi. And there's a free trial, and even if you don't sign up at the end of the trial, you're limited in terms of your ability to, I think, do cloud storage of your files, but you can still use it. And Form Mobi, in our world, it's designed to replace all of the stuff that an appraiser would have used, papers on a clipboard for. And so I'm going to show you a quick example. That's a detailed floor plan right down to things like plumbing fixture and kitchen appliance icons, windows, doors, all of that placed, done 100% on-site holding an iPad. And for this, it's not designed to work with a keyboard. So for this, I pull it out of the case and just enter my measurements. It does all the square footage calculation for me. And all of this you can do even if you never sign up for the premium version. So Form Mobi, that's one to look at. I will warn you, if you are, there's a little bit of a learning curve, but it's actually very clever, because if you think about it, one of the things as you're getting accustomed to an iPad is you're having to use your finger, and of course that's not as precise as a fine-tipped pencil or pen. But actually, when you're drawing the lines, it gives you this, this array of arrows, and so you can go at any number of angles, and you're just entering the dimension. So when I'm doing a house, I don't have to pay attention to anything other than which direction is this relative to the last side and how many feet and inches. And I type in 14.3, and I then hit the arrow in the direction of that wall, bang, wall's drawn. Then next, then next, then next. So square footage can be done very fast on this. And then with a little bit of practice, you can then quickly add interior walls and place plumbing fixtures, doors, windows, that sort of thing, and then get a floor plan. So that's Form Mobi. So that's something to look at.
Is that Android's doing that?
I don't know. Don't know.
They do. I just found it. Yeah.
The answer is yes.
It's free. Love it.
iPad mail app. Perfectly good, perfectly friendly, but for those of us who are using Google Apps for Business, and many of us are, I can never get the search functionality to work anywhere near as well as searching in Gmail. That's the most consistent drawback I've found when I'm dealing with the onboard app. So there is a search field right at the top of the iPad mail window, and you can specify, are you searching the from field, the subject field, are you searching all? Time after time after time, I'll run searches there, won't come up with it, and I know full well I'm searching for a keyword or a keyword and a name that I know is in my emails. If I open up the Gmail specific application, which is free, open up the Gmail application, and you can run both on your iPad at the same time, so you don't have to make a commitment to use one over the other. But time after time after time, my search comes up empty in the Apple Mail app. I launch Gmail, which opens, in 2 seconds, type in the same search field, and I get all of the results that I am accustomed to getting if I were running that search like on a full web browser version of Gmail. And it's that search functionality that really sets Gmail apart. And so one of the advantages of Google Apps for Business is it's very cross-platform compatible. And so my Gmail account, I primarily interact with it in Microsoft Outlook on my computer, but I also can interact with it from my iPad and from my Android device. Well, in my computer, as much as I like all the features and formatting available in Microsoft Outlook, I'll still usually keep a Gmail window open, a tab open in a web browser somewhere in the background, because when I need to search for something, there's no substitute for searching for it in Gmail directly. Because if you're using Google Apps in Outlook, it's not storing your entire library of emails. Whereas on the web browser, you're searching right in Gmail's servers, and it could be 4 years old and it finds it in a fraction of a second. So again, the search functionality is the biggest reason to have that loaded, even if you don't choose to make it your primary go-to email application. Any questions?
Use Chrome on your iPad?
I do. So you'll find, we talked about websites that'll identify what platform you're running on. There are noticeable differences in how certain websites will display, and so I have downloaded the free Google Chrome browser in my iPad, for my iPad, because the built-in one, the Apple browser, is Safari. Again, not a bad browser, still arguably much better than Internet Explorer, but Google Chrome, it is kind of nice to have certain consistent behaviors if that's what you've gotten accustomed to on your computer.
So this is just another app
Just another browser.
that you can open up. I mean, this
Uh-huh.
Gmail. I mean,
Yep.
you got Gmail already on there, but that's a different.
Right. And you could also go into your web browser and log into your Gmail account and do a search that way, and it would still work. It's just the Gmail app will save your account login, and you just push the icon and you're launched and you're in your email within 2 seconds.
And if you're using the Google Business apps that you have access to through the company, you can also use Drive, which you can store documents very similar to Dropbox as well.
Dropbox. Who uses Dropbox in here? Okay, good. So Dropbox is in a cross-platform world, in this complex cross-platform world in which we live. Dropbox is awesome because it lets you have, I'm going to pick on, I haven't seen her do it lately. I'm going to pick on Susan Yazel. I remember when I had an office way back in the good old days when I was allowed to have natural light. I had an office near the front. I remember watching Susan at the end of a lot of days walk out to her car carrying a physical stack of files that should have wedged under her chin like this, because it was stuff that she had to work on obviously when she was at home. And there's absolutely no need to do that anymore, because we have the document scanners in the building. You can scan everything to PDF, you can save to PDF, you can have a virtually paperless workflow. And the key is you have to have the ability to access that same library of files, whether you're here or at home. Now you can pop your computer out of off of your desk or out of your docking station and use that, which is what I do most of the time. But the best possible way to do it is use a tool like Dropbox, which will synchronize and back up as well. So it does both. It's a combination of backing up and offering synchronicity. What you're doing is you're basically designating a directory, a folder on your computer. If your primary device is a computer that would sit on your desk, and your Dropbox account gives you, say, 50 gigabytes or 100 gigabytes, you have that much space that it becomes an actual folder on your hard drive into which you can then create as many files and folders as you want. So within your 100 gigabyte account, in mine I have forms, and that has all my standard blank forms. I have pictures, all the RE/MAX logos and all my business pictures that I use on a regular basis. Then I have clients, and then under the client folder, every client, current client, has a current client folder by name, last name, comma, first name. Within that, I'll have the property address of the transaction that they are currently working on. All of the documents get saved there, and when I'm working here in the office, it's no different than saving it in my documents. It's just I go click on Dropbox and then find clients current and save the file there. Then when I'm doing that final walkthrough and I have the iPad, without having to think anything of it, from the iPad I go into Launch Dropbox. That took about 3 seconds to open up. And then when I go into the main Dropbox menu here, I'm browsing. So here's my Dropbox folders. Here's CCAR files. Here's clients current. There's forms. So I go to clients current. I navigate down to the client whose walkthrough I'm about to do. There's the property address, and here are all the PDFs that I have on file for that client, and I go into the signed post-inspection agreement. I'm pulling up the PDF of the fully executed post-inspection agreement, so I know I'm looking at the document that shows exactly what was agreed upon regarding the inspection, and I'm holding this in my hand as we go through the house to make sure, yep, that got done, that got done, that got done. And it functions the very same on my Android device. So I primarily save stuff into here from a Windows-based computer. I access it all the time from an iPad, and I also access it in a pinch if I'm not carrying my iPad. I can access it from my Android smartphone. Completely cross-platform compatible. Extremely handy.
You can also use SugarSync.
Similar device, similar deal?
You don't have to physically put it in a box. You can just check which items you want to be available as well.
Right. And Dropbox will let you do something similar.
Yeah.
It still has to be within Dropbox.
The only thing different with SugarSync to Dropbox is with Dropbox you physically take it, whatever files you want to be accessible by Dropbox you put in Dropbox. SugarSync, you just download to whatever computers you want to access it from.
And then just checking which directories.
Yeah, decide which ones are available on each computer. Dropbox has those limitations as well, but I guess you don't always have to be so organized to make sure you remember to put that file in Dropbox.
Any questions, guys? Edna?
If you were closing and had a document in your Dropbox file, and without having a paper copy and they needed it, I've been in that situation earlier, but I didn't have.
You hit one button and you send it via email.
You would email it to somebody?
Yeah, email it to the closer.
Okay.
Absolutely, and I've done that many times. The other thing with Dropbox, and since I'm not familiar with SugarSync, you have to tell me if it does something similar. The other thing is, one of the biggest frustrations I'll have, and it's happened to me just this week, is there are a lot of people that foolishly scan white papers, that is text documents, real estate contracts, in color. And what that does, it does a whole bunch of things, all bad. But what that does is it makes the file size literally several times bigger than it should be. And when it's in color, not black and white, not monochrome, it also makes the white background not perfectly white, so then you get dingy documents. And color is compressed differently than black and white. And so photographs are JPEG compressed, which is great. It's a very efficient way to compress photographs, and if it's done well, you can't tell it. When you're doing letters, when you're doing white papers, it tends to make text look fuzzy. So unnecessarily big file size, dingy background because it's not perfectly white, and it ends up causing text degradation because of the type of the compression that's used. And yet this happens all the time. So I had another agent send me a 24 megabyte offer file. And it took longer for her to send it to me than she was expecting. And when I saw that it was 24 megabytes, and using Google Apps for business, we can handle, if you're using a Gmail account, you can handle monstrously large attachments. So your email address will probably not be the limitation. But people with work emails or many other email providers will have their emails bounce back if they're sending something that's bigger than 4 or 5 megabytes. And this person was sending me something that was 24 megabytes. So once I got it, because my email account was not the bottleneck, I was man enough to handle a monstrous attachment like that. But the problem was I couldn't turn around and forward that to my client as a 24 megabyte attachment because it would cause the same problem that was the reason the offer was hours late coming in. So with Dropbox, all I have to do is I do a save as, I save it into that client's folder, the client for whom the offer was tendered. So it's signed blank offer, I mean the last name of the buyer, signed offer, and then I put in the property address, save it in Dropbox. Dropbox synchronizes in the cloud. The reason that works is on the iPad, I'm not pulling a copy that's off of my computer. What I'm doing is I save it on my computer, and Dropbox is automatically, whenever you're connected to the internet, synchronizing into cloud storage. And when I go to pull it off of my iPad, it's downloading from the cloud. Well, if you're in the office with a high-speed connection, you go to save that signed offer in Dropbox, and in about 2 minutes, it's been synchronized into the cloud. And as soon as that's happened, in Dropbox, one of the features is you right-click on the file, and you don't have to launch anything special. You can go into Windows Explorer and do it. Go into My Computer, find the file, just right-click on it. There's an option for Dropbox, and it says Send Link. Then you're not sending the 24 megabyte attachment that was the cause of all these other problems upstream. All you're doing is right-click, Send Link. 2 seconds later, a Dropbox web browser has launched, and you click a button for copy this link, and then you paste the link into your email. So, dear client, you may view the offer that I just received on your house by clicking the link below. Control V or paste, link's right there. They click it, and there it is.
What's in Dropbox? Does that matter if they open it up on an iPad or on their computer?
Completely cross-platform compatible. So they can view it on their iPhone, on their Android phone, on their iPad, on their computer.
It's not going to slow them down.
No, if they're on a slow cellular connection out in the middle of nowhere, if they live in Rankin, for example, and they're Sprint, then they're going to have problems. But I mean, if they're in civilization and have a good, on a 4G connection in Champaign, a 24 megabyte file would take something like 30 seconds to download, 45 maybe. So no, not a problem. And if they're in their office, and remember, it's those work email addresses that are most likely to have a strict file limit that would be the first to bounce back those 24 megabyte files. So that is another huge, huge benefit to that. And I'll also tell you another way that I've used Dropbox many times is how many times have you had occasion just with real estate related pictures, but also with personal stuff too, where you want to be able to send some full resolution pictures you've taken to somebody, either to share pictures of their house, or you've taken pictures over Thanksgiving weekend and you don't want to send somebody just a tiny screen resolution. You want to send them the full resolution versions that they could actually go print at Walgreens. Well, if you took, even point and shoot digital cameras will have massive files. You can't send 10 of those, and certainly not 20 or 30. But in Windows, no special software needed. In Windows, you can go into whatever folder you put those photo files, and you can right-click and say Send To. And you can highlight 10 or 20 or 100 of them, Send To, and then one of the options is Compressed Folder. What that does is it zips them all into a single zip file. A zip file, a file that ends with .zip, is just a suitcase file that, when opened, will then display all of the individual files that are contents. Again, in Dropbox, you take those 100, because you're not going to want to send 100 different URLs to each of those pictures. What you do is you select all those pictures, Send To, make a new zip file with those, and as long as that's in Dropbox, now if it's a huge file, if it's 100 megabytes, it may take 20 or 30 minutes for it to synchronize with the cloud. You come back 20 minutes later, send link, bang. The recipient now, as long as they're on a high-speed connection, they can access all of those high-resolution photos, which may be 100 megabytes of stuff. Or a gigabyte of stuff, if you send them a directory that's got 150 of them. So there's just a ton of potential that is unlocked with Dropbox that you don't have to think about. It's just very, very usable. Any other questions there? Edna?
How do you get DocuSign to interact with something that you have put in Dropbox, like this huge file that you had? Say you wanted to do a DocuSign.
I know that DocuSign has some ability to let you process documents from cloud storage accounts. I don't remember, frankly, if I'm spoiled, because before I would go to the trouble of trying to do it on my iPad, I would be calling Tracy if I were on the road and telling her to do it. So I have to confess to being a little spoiled, but I know that DocuSign there's a DocuSign app, and it does have the ability to process DocuSign documents sourced from certain cloud storage accounts, and I believe Dropbox is compatible.
It'll do it from Dropbox, it'll do it from Google Drive, and then there's 2 others that I've not heard of that they have some kind of relationship with.
Okay, and you can always remember you don't have to have a special app necessarily for DocuSign. You can go into your web browser and log into DocuSign through a browser window and do it that way as well. Okay, good. That is a good question. Anything else that's on your list of must-haves, Wayne?
Yes, have you found a way to get around Flash in Apple?
You're not referring to my exhibitionism, are you? No. Okay. So what Wayne is asking is, Flash is a video file format, and it's what YouTube used to use for all of its video content. And it's actually what my photo tours use. There are a lot of nice features about Flash types of encoding. Apple has had the mother of all feuds with Adobe, and Adobe is the maker of Flash. And as a result, Apple does not support Flash files. And so there is still a lot of Flash content on the web. There are a lot of really cool looking websites that'll have motion graphics, not necessarily video clips, but sometimes video clips, but motion graphics that are Flash driven. And if you're on an iPad, there's just a placeholder and it's not available. There are some workarounds. And on the iPad, I would encourage you to install this. It's free. And then, or maybe I paid $5 for it, I don't remember. But what it will do is, the workaround is the device won't play the Flash content. What it does is it streams the Flash content to a third-party server and then downloads it streaming as video. And what it is called, and YouTube there's no longer a YouTube app on board in Apple. Again, YouTube is now owned by Google, and Apple does not want to play nice with Google. So you now have to download a separate YouTube viewer. Jasmine, Jasmine, is what I've used for YouTube videos. And let me tell you what that other browser is. Photon, P-H-O-T-O-N, Photon.
How do you get around with Innovia then? Because, you know, if you install pictures, or if you install a visual tour, a lot of them are in Flash, or they're YouTube. So
YouTube does play okay now. Most of YouTube will play okay. There's some videos that are Flash driven still that won't, but most of YouTube does not suffer on an iPad. And Flash, I would encourage you, for your purposes, so that you don't find yourself unable to see content, download the Photon browser. And again, it will require pretty good bandwidth, because the transitions, the things that will make photos in Flash fade smoothly from one to the other, all become basically streaming video. That's the workaround. In terms of, I upload photos, the maximum 24, into Innovia, and we'll go and upload in high resolution all of our photos into Realtor.com manually. And I have my third-party hosted, which is on my own web server, photo tours. That's a Flash-based deal, and if somebody happens to do it on an iPad and it doesn't work, that's the second or third photo option. They'll still be able to see the lower resolution photos that are on board with the listing. But that's a really good question. And that's one of those things that becomes a non-issue if you go with an ultrabook instead of an iPad. Okay, so I want to get through the last of these items real fast. So, quick must-have accessories. The two biggies that came to my mind that a lot of people seem not to realize are as valuable as they are, but there are a few of you in here that know about these things. Second monitor. And that is such a productive enhancement to add to your hardware that I have paid on my dime for everyone on my team to have a second monitor. So if you go into the office that Jamie and Tracy and Jeffrey are in, you'll see big 24-inch monitors on all of those desks. And that's because when you land there with your notebook computer, and even inexpensive notebook computers, you plug in the VGA cable into the VGA port on the computer, and it will give you the option of extending your desktop onto that second monitor. So number one, if it's more comfortable, if you have a compact notebook, it may just be more comfortable to go to a 24-inch monitor and display it there. But if you're extending your desktop, then you're able to just seamlessly drag items from one screen to the other. But in real life, why this makes you more productive? a Novia window on one monitor, or if your monitors are really high resolution, in half of one monitor. An email that you're reading from a client whose email has the search parameters in it in another window, and maybe a different web browser in yet another window. So with two high resolution monitors, I can have 4 very usable windows simultaneously in front of me. If you don't have the ability to do that, then you're going to have your productivity suffers one of 2 ways. You either are having to toggle back and forth through windows that are stacked on top of each other and only view one at a time, and my memory is feeble enough that as soon as I toggle to the one, I can't remember what I just saw on the other one. Or what many of us are accustomed to doing is you hit print on the email so you can hold it in your hand while you've got your web browser taking up your whole screen. And then you get into, well, the more of this work we do on the go, the less practical it is to just hit print. And so having a second monitor available is a phenomenal enhancement to your productivity, and until you have done it, I don't think many of you would appreciate how big a difference it makes. And it's not expensive. Full 1080p, the standard full high definition monitor resolution on a 24-inch monitor, those can be had for $150 all day long. $150. And so I now have on my stand-up desk, and I have a quick video, a 1-minute video I'll show you in a minute, that'll demonstrate that and this next item I'll talk about. But that opens up a ton of productivity options.
Plug this thing in now? You plug in a second?
Same way I have so it's the same way the projector's plugged in right now. You see the VGA cable right here? Yeah. So I just have, and at home I have the same thing. I have a desktop monitor that sits, it's actually a TV, 24-inch LCD TV that will also do monitor duty. I have a VGA cable that's stashed back behind it, so when I go park this at home in my kitchen, if I want both monitors, I plug that into the VGA cable right here, and then I got 2 screens worth of real estate to work with. And then you'll see in just a minute the 1-minute video showing at my desk, I put this in a docking, in a port replicator, and I close this, and I have 2 desktop monitors, 2 24-inch monitors side by side. So, must-have accessories, port replicator. Tell me that's not sexy. Look at all those exciting ports. Anyway, port replicators. Those are really kind of monstrous looking little beasts, but they are incredibly useful. And I'm going to show you, this is taken under bad lighting in my office, but I'm going to show you, yeah. Jamie, would you hit the lights? They're around on the door side. You get to take a journey on a brief journey under my desk so that you can see, for those of you who aren't convinced that a port replicator is really exciting, how fast it makes setup and teardown of a computer. So when I get to the office, I don't have to get out my power adapter, my mouse, any accessory keyboard. To set up at the office, computer comes out, I hit the power button to pop it out of standby mode, and then I keep my port replicator on the floor. Obviously you won't necessarily have to crawl around on your desk, so have a quick look. All I did was pop the computer onto that. It locks right in one step. And then the monitors go into an automatic power save mode. So within about 10 seconds, computer's on, ready to go. And the port replicator keeps my speakers, my mouse, my keyboard, 2 monitors all connected. So in those 10 seconds, all of that stuff is ready to go, and I get my 2 monitors to use. So the excitement of a port replicator.
Who's filming you?
Tracy, and she did that about an hour ago, and I said, file this under other duties as assigned in your job description. So,
are they pretty? What we used to call a docking station?
Yeah, same thing. Those are used interchangeably. So the nice thing there is there's a proprietary gigantic connector here that's got a gazillion pins. And the reason that that's like that is it's designed, if you have a Dell and you buy the compatible Dell port replicator, you just drop that onto the port replicator and all of those pins duplicate every port on your computer. So you've then got a bunch of USB ports, monitor ports, audio ports, power supply, all there ready to go, and everything that normally connects to your computer stays connected. You want to turn the lights back on for me, please, Jamie? So everything stays connected, and it literally then means transplanting the computer as a 10-second item. So I keep a power supply in my notebook computer bag, a low-profile travel one. That's what I'm using here right now, but I don't have to get that out when it goes home or goes to the office. I have a power supply sitting in my kitchen, stashed behind that little TV in the corner. So when I get home, plug in the power supply and pop out a portable mouse. But at the office, I got a mouse, keyboard, speakers, 2 monitors, and a power supply all there. So 10 seconds, pop it on, and I'm ready to go. And those aren't terribly expensive. I mean, they may be $150, but that means you're not coiling power cords every time you move the computer around. And that does contribute to productivity, because then it's like, I'm just making a quick trip to the office. I don't want to have to tear down all my stuff here, set it back up there, tear it all down. If it's 10 seconds, then it becomes a non-issue. Oh no, not that again. Okay, so cameras, last item I wanted to talk about. SLRs have never been cheaper, never been better. So if you're contemplating a camera purchase and it's for real estate and you don't have, really specialized needs, you're not planning on shooting, weddings or shooting underwater or doing anything really, really hard on the equipment, the $500 to $600 price point, including a bundled lens, gets you very, very good quality. $500 to $600 bundles with either, let me run through this real quickly. So you'll get, with SLRs versus point and shoots, you'll get better image quality, better low light sensitivity, and you'll have the ability to put on different lenses, meaning also expand your lens collection later on. You can start with the basic camera body and the lens that's included. Those are very, very, very good for the money, and then add, for example, an ultra-wide lens later. Specific models, these are basically the 2 entry-level models. And Chuck, is that the one you just bought?
I bought a T3.
Okay, so was that, yeah. So Chuck just bought another camera body. So these are the entry-level models from Nikon and Canon. Both are very good. Both will have very comparable image quality, comparable quality lenses, comparable price points. Let your purchase decision be dictated by if you already own any Canon or Nikon lenses, or if you have a friend that you know is a photo geek that will be helpful to you, buy whatever platform they already own, because then they'll be familiar with the user interface. But again, $550, $600. Both of these at those prices are bundled with these lenses. And those are very, very good lenses. They're not, they're not all metal professional quality. They're designed to be bumped around for a 2,000 photo shoot day, out on the beach. But they're very, very capable performers. Point and shoot cameras. If you don't want to deal with an SLR, these are 2 of the best models in compact form factors that get you wide and light sensitive. And I own this. Eric Porter just bought one of these. This is, in my estimation, the single best camera that doesn't have interchangeable lenses, that's reasonably portable. It does have a lens barrel that sticks out, and the lens cap you have to take off and put in your pocket and put back on. It's got an old school lens cap. That's the biggest limitation on it. It's not truly pocketable. But it's as wide a field of view as a point and shoot camera gets, and it's extremely light sensitive, and it shoots great video. The video of me looked ghastly because of the lighting in my office, but it shoots phenomenal high definition video, and the zoom and the audio are all great, and the autofocus, all while you're shooting video. Most point and shoot cameras, video has a whole bunch of trade-offs. It shoots phenomenal video for a device that was not made specifically for that. The Canon model is similar sort of price point, very same wide angle on the wide end of this. What you'll notice, by the way, both of these models do not say they've got 20:1 zoom ranges. How many of us need to zoom in on somebody else's nostril hair from across the room? Very rarely do I need to do that. And with the trade-off there is you don't usually get low light performance or good wide angle performance, and there's limitations to how small the lens can be made if you have this mega zoom range. These both have roughly 5 times zoom ranges. So this won't zoom in on the nostril hair from across the room, but they both go very wide, and they'll zoom in to take very nice portraits. So I would argue that these are very, very, what most people would need most of the time, and they have very good low light performance. The Canon is going to be physically a tiny bit smaller, and it has the integrated lens cap. So when you turn it off, you don't have to worry about popping the lens cap back on like I do on my Panasonic, but it's not quite as light sensitive a lens. Any questions there?
Now you'd still recommend because you had before the LX5,
right?
Because I got an email from them this morning that the LX5 is on sale for $250.
And that'd be one it also takes the same battery. so then you have another battery. But that'd be one that I'd look at like as, for a kid camera. The only bad thing is, if you're giving it to somebody who's not a serious user, who isn't going to be pretty serious about it, is they're going to lose the lens cap at some point, or they'll just get tired of the fact that it has to be manually taken on and off.
That could be me.
Yeah. Edna?
We'll figure out what's on with it. You have difficulty taking photos under these new CFL lights?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they will. So compact fluorescent lights have gotten much better in the last 5 years at mimicking the light temperature of incandescents, because it used to be that all the fluorescents would look like you had a grow room in your listing. It used to be, because it all had that colder daylight color temperature. And this is a subconscious sort of a thing, but what differentiates a warm residential feel versus an institutional feel a lot of times is the color temperature of the light. So if it feels like a colder color temperature, it's what you associate with an institution, a hospital or a school building. Compact fluorescents have become very, very good to our eyes when we walk in at mimicking the color temperature of an old incandescent light bulb. It's 2700 degrees Kelvin is the color temperature they mimic. But still, when you're dealing with an image sensor on a video or a photo camera, a digital camera, it will have a slightly sickly green color cast to it. So I deal with it if we got somebody with a house that's got 50 of them in it, but you'll notice that even if it looks fine to walk through once the bulbs are warmed up and are at full brightness, even if it looks fine to walk through in person, you may notice that you're challenged to try to tweak the color because you've either got the interior kind of tinted with that sickly green, or if you correct for that, then suddenly the daylight looks real cold blue coming in the window. So your observation is correct, and the best way to fix it is encourage sellers to swap out with incandescents. The other reason that I tell sellers to do that is because I remind them that when realtors walk in on showings, they walk in, and in a typical room, except for maybe the kitchen, but in most rooms, they walk in, they flip the switch, they look at the room for 20 seconds, and that was long enough for that bulb to get all the way up to 40% brightness. And so they never saw it with the room looking properly lit. So that's the other big reason, is the instant on full brightness. So encourage sellers to swap out compact fluorescents. And remind them, if they pack them carefully, take them to the next house. They probably spend a lot of money on them. Buying the gear, just several of the websites I use most frequently. Obviously, if you're able to, support local businesses, but so much of the stuff that's specialized for use for us, like neither of those cameras are commonly carried at places like Best Buy, certainly not as store stock items. So B&H Photo, great site for photo, video, professional audio, a lot of consumer electronics, phenomenal site, New York based. Newegg is where I order a lot of electronics from, buy.com, and of course Amazon. The other thing that's good about these sites is all of them offer pretty good real user reviews, and so that can be extremely useful as well. That's it. That's all I got. Any questions? Darnell?
I just want to, back to the apps real quick. Adobe Reader X, I don't know if it works on the iPad, but on the Android, I can actually download the PDF from Dropbox. I can upload it from Dropbox, make my corrections. I can draw a line, put a new price on it, save it.
And it will save with the annotations?
Save it, yeah. And then Dropbox, I've done that from inspection when they look.
What's it called again?
Adobe Reader X.
Okay.
It's version 10.3.1. I have it on my computer where I can make those changes.
Right.
Adobe,
right.
But it's so much easier to just do it right here on the tablet. Man.
Right. Any other questions?
I have a question about that.
Thanks, Matt.
You're welcome. Yeah, keyboard.
Thing here. So my iPad is not cellular capable.
Yeah.
Will it still connect with one?
Yep. Yep. This uses Bluetooth, and so. Yeah, and Bluetooth, we think the most common Bluetooth device we see are Bluetooth headsets, but Bluetooth really, all that is it's ultra short range. Bluetooth is just designed to replace cables. It's designed to replace cable, 6-foot cable run. And so Bluetooth headsets replace the old wired headsets, and that's all that it amounts to. So this, instead of having a cable that connects, uses Bluetooth.
Did you get that online, or did you buy it here?
I bought this at the Apple Store in Georgetown, and the Apple Store didn't carry any third-party keyboards, although they sell other third-party stuff. So then I had a whole little planes, trains, and automobiles moment. So I then took a taxi to the Best Buy closest to Georgetown, got there literally 1 minute after close at 9 o'clock at night. Then I hopped the metro to find a Target in a totally different part of the city, open till 10, got there at 9:45. And this was, they sold 2 different models of iPad compatible keyboards. This was the one that was in stock at 9:45 at Columbia Heights in Washington, D.C.
And at a Target?
Yep.
I saw that at Best Buy here in town.
And this is favorably reviewed, so it did happen to be the one that was in, but I'd already read reviews on it, so I knew it was perfectly fine.
And I thought it was so great, I got one.
Yeah, Max now has one. Tom Roth uses the same keyboard. Bill Craig has the same keyboard. I have a cousin that just got a different, I don't remember the brand. His looks a little cooler, but it doesn't have an integrated case. So it's a clamshell and it's magnetic, and so the iPad sandwiches up with that keyboard. So you see basically two sides of this looking surface, but there is no case. So if you drop it, you're out of luck unless you carry it in a separate bag. Right. And it's magnetic, and so it does stick pretty well in the little groove, you know, the equivalent of this. Yep. It's magnetic, whereas this is just gravity. Yep. But see, when I'm using this is actually held into this sleeve here. So if something happens, and it has, like if I'm sitting on an airplane seat or I'm just balancing on my knees, it certainly happened where it's flopped off and it's not going to go anywhere. You know, so I do think that the case functionality of this is worthwhile. Frankly, one of the biggest appeals of this is I don't have to have a gigantic computer bag with a power adapter and all the stuff that has to go with me if I'm toting this somewhere. And so I really didn't want to have a separate case for this. I mean, I wanted it to just be ready to go. Max?
I'm having trouble with my PDF Expert updating. It's been in the update and continuously, and it's not.
Did you force it closed and uninstall it? Because remember, the Apple Store will remember that you already paid for it. So I would try forcing it closed and then uninstall it. Anything else, guys? Hey, thanks for coming. This was fun.
Thank you.
Teresa's like, in stark contrast to his usual crap. This is this is a good time.
Door open this time.